Every project that gets built, whether it's schools, hospitals, houses, whatever it might be, you've got a design team, so a project team. You've got the client, who is the one instructing the works, and then they'll get together a project team, which will be made up of architects, engineers, cost consultants, project managers, contractor that will come on board, all work together to get this project going. They'll also get planners on board to help the planning process. And at the early stages, you want to first make sure that if you're going to spend so much money on all these consultants as a client, you want to make sure that that project is going to go ahead. So making that decision requires quite a few things. It's one is the experience of the client, that they know kind of on what projects that they know they'll be able to progress and get planning and go through it. However, they should also be doing surveys at the right point in time and getting data from different data sources. So one of our partners that we work with, for example, is Landmark. Landmark is great because you can get really early feasibility data for anything, for flooding, ecology, contamination, whatever it might be. But at a certain point, that's good enough with high level. But when you really want to make a big decision to buy a property and to buy a piece of land or to progress with it and give a thumbs up that you're going to spend hundreds of thousands on consultancy fees and architecture fees and things like this, you really want to be confident. So at that point, we would recommend you need to do the surveys. So that means actually commissioning specialists for every single different type of risk and survey that you might need on a project. And there's so many: tree surveys, ecology surveys, asbestos, land contamination, geotechnical, planning, reports on title, bat surveys, UXO surveys, so exploded bombs. There's lots of different things. Not all of these are required right at the beginning. How you would typically do them is some at the beginning and then some a little bit later and some later in order to kind of avoid spending too much money up front. But de-risking a project is really important. And the reasons you do it, one is if you want to buy a site, you really should do initial surveys to identify that this is a goer, that you can progress with this. The other reason is if you want to get the architects and the engineers and everyone to start working, you need to give them the information they need. So for example, a topographical survey is very important so they can see the lay of the land and design a scheme that fits within the boundary. So topographical survey, tree surveys, things like this to unlock the design team. That's a key priority. You need to unlock the design team. If your design team starts without asking for these surveys, there's a problem there. They should be asking for these surveys. It's really important. Otherwise, they're going to have to go back and redesign it. So if you spend lots of money on architects and engineers and all of a sudden you have new information, they need to change their designs, you're going to have to pay them again. So this is why you need to do the right surveys at the right point in time, not too late. Then when you're progressing through the project, you want to get planning approval. To get planning approval, you need to make sure you're doing the surveys that are typically required by that planning authority, that local authority. So these would typically get recommended from your planning consultant. So these would be had to be added. So in London, one that's kind of really common nowadays is air quality, for example. So depending on what that local authority is asking for, you need to make sure you've got these. Otherwise, you won't get planning. So 3 key reasons. 1 is to know what site to buy or not to buy. 2 is to unlock your design team. And 3 is to make sure you get through the planning process. The 4th reason I would say is to de-risk the project. There's so many risks in construction, abortive costs. And my view is abortive costs plague the industry. There's always projects where if you ask your colleagues and ask people around and you say, have you had any schemes where there's been big abortive costs? And what I mean by this is something that could have been foreseen earlier, money spent on something that could have been foreseen earlier. I bet you they'll give you a lot of examples.